There's been a serious incident on our streets, a stabbing incident as it's been described by locals. We know a man's been taken to hospital, but we don't have any update as to his condition. But 3 people have been arrested in connection with this incident. As a city, these scenes are extremely saddening, especially with...
Manchester, March 18th, 2005. The streets of Chorlton are quiet until the sound of heavy, uneven footsteps breaks the silence. A giant of a man, 6 feet tall, 20 stone, staggers through the cold night air. His name is Desmond Noonan, one of the most feared gangland figures in Britain. He stops outside a modest house on Merseybank Avenue and pounds on the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Inside, a crack dealer with dreams of becoming a chef reaches for a kitchen knife. Moments later, Manchester's criminal underworld will be shaken to its core. Today, we look back at the killing which rocked Gangland Manchester. This is the murder of Dessie Noonan. Welcome to Crime Pulse. If you're new here, hit subscribe and join our growing community digging into the UK's most dangerous criminal underworlds. Like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. To understand this killing, you first need to understand the man who died and the family that ruled Manchester's criminal underworld for over a decade. The Nunans, brothers Dessie, Damian, and Dominic, were among the most feared names in the city during the 1980s and 90s. Starting out as bouncers in the chaotic Manchester nightclub era, they climbed the gangland ladder, using violence as their currency. Stabbings, shootings, and intimidation became their trademarks, allowing them to seize control of a significant slice of Manchester's drug trade. Their notoriety exploded in 1991 after the shotgun murder of Cheetham Hill gangster White Tony Johnson in a pub car park. Damian and Dessie were charged alongside 3 other men, but the jury failed to reach a verdict. A retrial saw Dessie in the dock again, this time with 2 others. One was acquitted. For Dessie and the remaining defendant, the jury was deadlocked once more. The message to the streets was clear: the Nunans were untouchable. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing 20 stone, Dessie's size alone was enough to unsettle rivals, but it was his reputation that sealed it. Dessie was a hitman and a volatile crack addict. Very, very dangerous, investigative journalist Donald McIntyre later told the Daily Telegraph. He also described him as complex, a man shaped by deep deprivation and capable of sudden, extreme violence. Dessie was born in 1959 and became a notorious gangster who rose to prominence in Manchester's criminal underworld alongside his brothers, Dominic and Damien. The Noonan family is likely familiar to many in Manchester, as they were a formidable force involved in a wide range of criminal activities, from protection rackets to drug trafficking. Let's dive into Dessie's rise to power. Growing up on the tough streets of Cheetham Hill in the 1960s and 1970s, Dessie quickly learned the importance of strength and influence. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Manchester's underworld was thriving, and the Nunans saw an opportunity to establish themselves. Dessie, along with his brothers, started small, engaging in petty crimes and street fights. However, Dessie had bigger ambitions. A strategic thinker, he knew that to gain real power, he needed to form alliances and eliminate rivals. Dessie began by offering protection to local businesses, a common tactic to generate income and influence. He also forged links with gangs in Moss Side and other areas of Manchester. One of Dessie's key strengths was his ability to network, connecting with other criminal organizations to expand his operations. By the mid-1980s, the Nunans were no longer just another gang. They were becoming a major force in Manchester's criminal scene. Dessie possessed a complex personality. Charismatic yet volatile, he could switch from persuasive charm to ruthless aggression in an instant. His ability to make people feel valued and important secured their loyalty. However, the Nunans faced constant challenges from rival gangs, and Dessie's ruthlessness became evident. He was known for his brutal tactics against those who threatened his territory. A well-known story recounts a rival gang attempting to encroach on Noonan territory. Dessie didn't just retaliate, he made a public example of them, ensuring everyone knew that crossing him was a grave mistake. Believe it or not, we're a nice family. We don't do everything nice, but we look after each other. We look after our friends. We come out at 3 or 4 in the morning. We stop all the burglars. We stop most of the filthy drugs hanging about. We're strong because we've got lots of strong, loyal people around us. If they think they can just take one of us out, "They're very silly people." This quote was said by Dessie Noonan to investigative journalist Donald McIntyre during the filming of the documentary A Very British Gangster, 2007. By the late 1980s, Dessie had established a vast network of connections. The Nunans were no longer limited to street-level crime. They were involved in various illicit activities, from drug trafficking to high-level heists. Dessie also maintained a facade of legitimacy, investing in local businesses and building relationships with influential figures, including law enforcement and politicians. This duality, being a feared gangster while also a respected figure in some circles, made him incredibly powerful. A key turning point in Dessie's rise was his involvement in Manchester's booming nightclub scene in the 1980s and 1990s. Clubs like the Hacienda and other venues across the city were central to the nightlife. The Nunans provided security for some of the biggest clubs, using these venues as fronts for drug distribution. Controlling nightclubs gave Dessie immense power and wealth, further solidifying his position in Manchester's criminal underworld. Despite his growing power, Dessie never forgot the importance of family. His brothers, Damian and Dominic, were integral to the empire. Damian, known for his brute strength, served as the enforcer, while Dominic was involved in various aspects of their operations. Together, they were a formidable team, their loyalty to each other unbreakable. They even adopted the slogan, "Look after them that look after you." Dominic reportedly changed his name to reflect this philosophy. Dessie, Damian, and Dominic Noonan appeared untouchable, but their lifestyle carried inherent risks. In the world they inhabited, it only takes one person to disrupt the empire they had built. While Dessie was building his reputation and influence in Manchester's underworld, another figure, Derek McDuffus, was living a very different kind of life. McDuffus was born in Manchester, but spent much of his childhood in Jamaica, only returning to the UK in his 20s. A father of three, he wasn't known as a big-time gangster or a power broker. Instead, he carved out his existence on the fringes, part small-time drug dealer, part community character. He made some money DJing at clubs in Manchester and Ashton-under-Lyne, but his main income came from selling crack and heroin out of his home on Chorlton's Merseybank estate. Yet McDuffus was not without softer passions. He loved to cook, especially Jamaican dishes, and was particularly proud of his signature curry goat. It wasn't unusual for him to invite the very addicts who came to buy drugs into his kitchen, serving them steaming plates of food before sending them on their way. In fact, McDuffus had dreams of walking away from the drug trade altogether. Alongside a friend, he planned to start a food truck business. The vision was clear: good food, a steady income, and a fresh start. But those plans fell apart when Manchester City Council refused their preferred pitch in Chorlton, offering instead a spot in Moss Side. By then, McDuffus had already bought equipment for the venture, including a neatly color-coded set of chef's knives. Those knives would soon play a central role in one of Manchester's most infamous murders. By 2003, the Noonan family was already reeling from personal tragedy. 18 months earlier, Damian Nunan had died in Jackson Memorial Hospital, Miami, 4 days after falling off a quad bike while on a family holiday in the Dominican Republic. Almost 2 weeks later, Salford came to a standstill for his funeral. At All Souls RC Church in Liverpool Street, West, hundreds of mourners lined the pavements. Damian's coffin was carried on a horse-drawn carriage, led by an 18-piece bagpipe band, with a wagon stacked high with floral tributes trailing behind. The spectacle drew the attention of investigative journalist Donald McIntyre, a meeting that would later see him filming Dominic and Dessie for the TV documentary A Very British Gangster. But even as the family mourned, another storm was brewing. Around Christmas 2004, Dessie clashed with a dealer named McDuffus. McDuffus accused him of stealing drugs and retaliated by cutting him off completely. Threats flew between the two men. At one point, McDuffus told Dessie bluntly, "Get off, I'll kill you." Worse still, other dealers, warned by the Noonan brothers, refused to sell to Dessie, but he found a way around it. Using trusted friends as intermediaries, Dessie sent them to McDuffus's house on Merseybank Avenue to buy drugs on his behalf, keeping his supply line alive despite the ban. What began as a tense standoff over missing drugs was about to spiral into something far darker, a chain of events that would bring the feud to its deadly breaking point. On the night of March 18th, 2005, Dessie Noonan had been drinking heavily, a blur of beer, karaoke, and bravado at the Park pub in Northern Moor. Normally, he sent someone else to fetch his drugs, but that night, no one was available. So, swaying with alcohol and self-assurance, he went himself. He knocked on the door 3 times. After the 3rd knock, the door swung open. Derek Yardie McDuffus stepped out, clutching a kitchen knife. Without hesitation, he drove the blade into Noonan, forcing the 45-year-old gangster backwards, off the doorstep and into the street. Bleeding and disoriented, Noonan still managed to call his wife, gasping that he'd been stabbed. Moments after the attack, McDuffus threw the mortally wounded man into the cold night air to die on the pavement. It was a staggering end for a man who had once bragged on camera that he had more guns than the police and hinted at being behind 27 killings. Hours after the stabbing, McDuffus, clutching his own wounded leg, mimed the attack to a friend, making a stabbing motion and grunting, "I don't mess about." Those 4 words would be the closest he ever came to confessing to the murder of one of Manchester's most feared underworld figures. Derek McDuffus was arrested just days after the killing. By October 2005, he was standing trial for murder at Preston Crown Court under extraordinary security. A ring of steel was thrown around the building. Extra officers patrolled the grounds. Airport-style scanners checked every visitor before they stepped inside. The fear of retaliation or disruption was real. Under cross-examination, McDuffus gave little away. He denied knowing Dessie Noonan, denied selling drugs, and claimed he had nothing to do with the killing. But witnesses told a very different story. One recalled McDuffus's chilling boast, "I don't mess about," the morning after Noonan's death. Another described being handed a pair of blood-soaked shoes by McDuffus later that day. Shoes he dumped in a bin at Stretford-Arndale. The knife and the shoes were never recovered. The jury didn't believe McDuffus's denials. At 41 years old, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 15 years before parole could even be considered. In his sentencing remarks, Mr. Justice Davies acknowledged Noonan's criminal reputation, but made his point clear. It is true Desmond Noonan is no stranger to criminality and the world of crime, but like any other citizen, he has the right to live. You unlawfully took that life. You murdered him. He was very drunk. I doubt if he was in much of a position to defend himself against you. The Manchester Evening News ran the headline, "Noonan Killer, Life in Solitary," noting McDuffus would likely be kept apart from other inmates to protect him from revenge attacks. But that protection didn't last long. Within hours of arriving in prison, he was beaten so severely he spent weeks in hospital. The motive for Noonan's murder remains a mystery. Those close to the case believed it was a respect killing, that McDuffus had reached the end of his tether and was determined to show he wasn't scared of the 20th gangster. Whatever the reason, Yardie Derek has never revealed it. In April 2020, right in the midst of the first COVID-19 lockdown, Derek McDuffus, the Jamaican-born drug dealer who stabbed and killed Manchester underworld figure Desmond Noonan in 2005, quietly walked free from prison. McDuffus, 41 at the time of his sentencing, had been handed a life term following his conviction at Preston Crown Court, with a minimum of 15 years to serve before parole could be considered. His release came exactly on that threshold, authorized by a parole board panel after reviewing his case in detail. A statement issued at the time made clear that the decision hinged on whether McDuffus's risk to the public could be managed in the community. The board assessed not just the facts of the killing, but also his prison conduct, evidence of any rehabilitation, and the lasting impact on Noonan's family. Officials stressed that protecting the public remained their priority, a standard line in such cases, but one that drew quiet criticism from some quarters of Manchester's Gangland watchers. The release of Derek McDuffus in 2020 marked the end of a chapter in Manchester's bloody Gangland saga. But did it bring justice? Dessie Noonan's death sent shockwaves through the city's underworld, a stark reminder that even the most feared can fall. Was McDuffus a cold-blooded killer settling a score, or a man pushed too far by a volatile gangster? The truth remains elusive, much like the Noonans' own legend. What do you think? Should McDuffus have walked free? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know if you've got stories from Manchester's streets. If you're new to Crime Pulse, hit subscribe to dive deeper into the UK's darkest criminal tales. Like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. Until next time, stay sharp and stay safe.